Good afternoon. Hi everybody. You can hear me, yes? So welcome, Louise.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I'm here with Louise Kennedy from Ireland, and she has written a novel called Trespasses, and in Finnish it's Rikkomuksia, and it's translated by Maija Heikinheimo. And a really good translation. So, you just flew in from Ireland.
I did.
How was the trip?
It was just a bit. There were everything was very slow, but it was okay. Yeah, not disastrous, just very slow. Yeah.
And this, let's start with kind of a big dive into the themes, and then we'll go into the characters and more specifics. I think there are two defining themes interlocked in this novel, and I would say it's love and war. Of course, you can talk about a conflict, troubles, whatever, but it's basically wartime. Which one was for you maybe the driving force in your writing, or was it something else?
So I started to write very late. Well, I mean, I was 47, so I've been writing for 11 years or something, and I began writing short stories, and that was okay for a while. I just was very happy to write short stories, and I wanted to get better at them, and so I just kept writing them. And then something started to happen that they were getting more difficult, and I think maybe the last short story that I wrote, I have a short story collection that's not published here, but it's been published in the UK, and it had become really difficult. And I wrote something like, I don't know, I mean, I basically wrote a short novel, and I think what happened was, and then I ended up with 9,000 words, which is still short, it's a short story, but longer than the others. And I think that what had happened was that I was trying to squash a short story or a novel into the wrong form. So, and I didn't really realise that for years until I was writing a novel, and I thought, okay, this is what I should have been doing. But so I got sick in 2019. I got a diagnosis for melanoma, and I had to have surgery, and I knew that I was going to be off work for 3 months. And rather than worry about whether I was dying or not, I thought, and I didn't have an agent and I didn't have a publisher, I thought I would try to write a novel. I just needed something to do. So I wrote 1,000 words a day until I had what could, I suppose, charitably be called a novel, in that it was long, but it was a big mess. After that, when I started to write it, because nobody was going to see it, I was writing a love story, which isn't, I mean, the short stories were very much not like that. But I don't know why, or I didn't at the time know why, but I set it in 1975 in the place where I grew up. And I found very quickly, within a page or two, that the world that I lived in then, which was, it's interesting that you call it war, because certainly the British government was very keen to not call it a war and to make it sound like a law and order problem, which is absurd when there were tanks and things on streets full of children. So that's, I guess the love story came first. But then, I don't know, the further into it I got, the more I felt I had a responsibility to pay attention to what was happening at the time.
Yeah, and maybe just very shortly set the scene. As you told us, it was 1975. It's the height of what we call the Troubles.
Yeah, we called it the Troubles, and it's a really weird way. It's a very strange way to describe what happened. I don't know why that is. It sounds very gentle and sort of melancholy. And it really wasn't. It was vicious, brutal.
Yeah, and there were. Could you just it's Protestant Ireland and Catholic Ireland, and the British forces are in. Could you just shortly the basic scene of the town and the situation at the moment of 1975?
So I think that many representations of the Troubles show areas that are very divided. So they might be an area full of Catholics with a few IRA men running around, or a very Protestant area. But there were places that were mixed, and that's the sort of place that I grew up in. So my family, so a lot of the details of the book are based on my upbringing. So my family had a bar in a town which was supposedly mixed, but this makes me laugh now. So we were told it was mixed, but actually, so we were Catholic, and it was 90% Protestant, but I think our presence was so kind of offensive that they'd say it was mixed, very mixed, but it wasn't really. Like, we were in a minority, and were made to feel that very keenly. And there was also a very large British Army barracks on the edge of town. So some of the soldiers who carried out Bloody Sunday, for example, were stationed in the town for a while. And it was just very tense time.
And then there is, in your novel, it centers around this love story, and the main character is kind of the... we see most of it through her eyes, and she's called Cushla.
Yeah.
I didn't have time to check any pronunciation.
No, that's good. Yeah.
And she is a 24-year-old Catholic primary school teacher. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about her.
Yeah, so Cushla is 24. She has one brother called Eamon. I'm not sure what age Eamon is. I think maybe he's about 30. I didn't really think about that, but now I think he's probably 30. He's a bit older. And he runs the family pub. Her father has died within the last couple of years, and her brother runs the pub. Cushla lives with her mother, who is coping with her grief at being a widow by drinking an awful lot of gin, like morning, noon, and night. She's kind of drinking gin, and so Cushla teaches children in school. She helps out sometimes in the bar, and then when she goes home in the evening, she's dealing with a melancholic, alcoholic mother.
So her life is kind of bleak. There is not really anything to look forward to, and then she happens to meet this Protestant older married man, Michael. They meet at the pub, and how is what's the thing about Michael?
Yeah, it's sort of funny. Oh God! So I don't even know what the thing about Michael is. I mean, my daughter and her friends, for example, read the book and they were disgusted. They said, "Oh my God! Like, why? Why would some dirty old man, go near a 24-year-old?" And I was trying to explain that. First of all, it was the 1970s. Like, when I was a child, I didn't hear the word. I didn't hear the word misogyny until I was in adulthood. I certainly didn't. I rarely heard the word sexism. Sometimes the word chauvinism would be used, and I think maybe because people thought it was like French and a bit cute or something, So first of all, it's the 1970s. The other thing is that it's not really about what he is, or it's about what Cushla thinks he is, and I suppose it's about what she sees, and maybe that's what all relationships are about. Really, it's very much in the eye of the beholder. But yeah, Cushla, and it is a reality that a lot of the bars and places where people went had to close. Like Belfast city centre closed at 5 o'clock, and even when it was open, you had to go through security and be searched to get in there. So all of the city centre was closed at 5 o'clock every day. So there was nowhere to go, really. So I would say that a lot of what's going on with Cushla is boredom. And when this man comes in, who's different from probably the other regulars in the pub, who are sort of factory workers with, who watch a lot of sport on TV. That's about it.
You have this really beautiful but very realistic kind of writing, and I think that's also the love story. It's a great love story because it's kind of it feels so real. It's just like that that Michael isn't really perfect. Cushla doesn't really know much about him in the end, but still there is something. Well, just a compliment on your writing.
Well, okay, thank you. Sorry, I was like, okay. Thank you.
I don't know if how did you find the kind of style of writing?
I think so. I grew up near Belfast, and I lived there until I was 12, and then, for various reasons to do with the Troubles, my grandmother was nearly killed in a bomb explosion in 1971, and then the bar that we had, there were 2 bomb attacks on it in 1973 and 1975, and most of my family left the town that we lived in and moved south of the border, and then we followed in 1979 because my father was being intimidated at work because, anyway, it was kind of sectarian intimidation. But it wasn't just... He was being followed home by guys on motorbikes in a place where there were lots of sectarian assassinations happening, so we left. But when I went to my new school in the south, everyone spoke differently from me, and it wasn't just accent and the difference between a northern and a southern accent. The syntax sometimes was a little different in sentences, and anyway, I got teased a lot, and I was like 12 or 13, and thought, I can't actually tolerate this any longer. So I guess I deliberately changed my accent so that I would sound like everyone else. But it meant that the voice in my head is still very Belfast. So I think maybe the style or the voice in the book is probably the voice that's in my head or something. Yeah, and because it's quite a northern voice. Yeah.
Yeah, and somehow it's the whole thing about I started about the love and war thing. It's like you can't really separate the war and the or the conflict and the love interest in the book. Was that something you thought about a lot? How to like represent?
No, I didn't really think about it at all. I just. I think I just tried to pay attention and remember or something as I wrote. So on the days when Cushla is teaching in school, she teaches a class of 8-year-old children, and I turned 8 in 1975. So the school day is very much what my school day was like, where we had to...
Horrible.
Well, I mean, it was okay. It was weird, but in some ways it was very normal. I mean, we played ABBA records at home, and and the boys liked football and stuff. But there was also very weird, frightening stuff happening as well. Yeah.
That's another thing which is really comes out in the book is that Cushla is a lovely teacher actually. So obviously, for her students, it's not horrible. But then the surroundings. You managed to describe them so for a small child.
Yeah, well, that's from memory. Yeah, like every day. I mean, they do it in schools all the time. It's like a version of show and tell. So every day, we had to begin our school day by recounting the previous night's news in our own words. And in a normal place, that might be about, I don't know, a cat getting stuck up a tree. But we were talking about sectarian assassinations and bombs and kidnappings and hunger strikes and crazy things. But it was kind of considered to be good for us to be aware of what was happening around us, when actually it wasn't at all. Yeah.
Yeah. you already told us that it comes a lot from the personal experience. But I think then another thing that strikes me in this novel is that both Cushla and Michael, they are kind of moral creatures. Michael works as a barrister, like defending Catholic.
See, that's interesting because he defends everybody, but he would defend anybody. But the difficulty is that for a Protestant barrister to defend young Catholics, he defends Protestants too, but for him to defend young Catholics is seen as subversive or. It's deeply problematic because in places that are divided along lines like that, it's safest to stay on in your own camp and not to stray out because that kind of threatens everything for everybody. So,
and that's menacing for everybody. Yeah, and that's kind of in the whole book. There's you need to know where you can go. Mm-hmm. And then actually they both kind of cross the line because Cushla crosses the line as a young Catholic woman having an affair. And, do you have anything about the role of Catholicism in Cushla's character? What does it mean for her?
Yeah, so Cushla in some ways is like... there were a lot of young women around me when I was a young child. Like my mother was 19 when I was born, and I had aunts and various other people around. And if you saw them, they looked very modern, and they were very aware of things that were happening in the world, sort of culturally and in lots of ways. But at the same time, they went to mass all the time. They went to mass every week, and it was expected that they would stay at home and until some nice Catholic man turned up to marry them, and then they'd have like millions of children. But I think what I wanted to do maybe was to throw temptation in the way of somebody like that and see what happened.
Yeah, and we can't tell because everybody hasn't read the book, I guess. But I don't think Cushla has a strong sense of guilt, which I associate with cat. Is it something?
I think sometimes she does, and then most of the time she manages not to think about it. And I think that's maybe what lots of people do when they're transgressing, is that you can convince yourself of lots of things, can't you?
Yeah.
So I think that's what she does.
Yeah.
And then there are a couple of moments when she has to confront, I guess, the morality of it or lack of morality of it.
So what was the hardest thing about writing this book?
I think the Davy character was very difficult. So Cushla teaches these 8-year-old children, and there's one child in particular, his name is Davy, and she becomes really close to him and his family when something happens. That child isn't based on a real child, but there was a little boy who lived with my family for a couple of years. I guess between when I was like from the ages of 10 until I was 12, and he left, and he was very little. He arrived when he was like 1.5, and he left when he was 3.5 or something. So he was a foster child, so we didn't ever see him again, and don't know what happened to him. So I think maybe some of the kind of emotion around that, maybe I put into Davy. So that was really hard. So I spent like a lot of hours crying over that. But yeah, that was the hard bit.
Yeah, it's a bit emotional with him. It's so Davy lives in this. That's also one aspect of this, like the surroundings and the town, that their family lives in a Protestant area.
Well,
no,
it is. So but it's just so
a mix.
Like nobody designates an area Catholic or Protestant,
Yeah.
but the reality is, just because Protestants are in the majority that these are people who are living in, it's what we'd call it council housing. So it's, provided by the state or the local authority. And most of the people who live there are not Catholics. So the presence of Davy and his family is a problem to the people who live there already. And it's even more of a problem because Davy's mother is actually Protestant. So she's considered a traitor, I guess, for marrying a Catholic.
The thing that happens with Cushla and Michael, they get to know each other when Michael invites Cushla to this Irish evening to some liberal Protestants, and it's a bit embarrassing. They make Cushla also to speak Irish, but I was wondering, do you know how to speak Irish?
Well, every child in the south of Ireland has to learn Irish every day. It's compulsory. And I don't know how they've managed it, but most of us leave school with a very good grasp of complex grammar, but we can't actually speak it. So I have made attempts over the years to fix that. I mean, last summer and the summer before, I did intensive classes in an Irish-speaking part of Ireland to try and improve it, and I'm getting better. But yeah, I can understand it when it's on the radio, and I can read it pretty well. But there's a kind of delay thing with speaking it.
Can you say something in Irish?
Oh my God, well, I don't know what you want me to say.
It's awful, because you also describe in the novel that Cushla is made to kind of...
Yeah, although at the same time, though, Cushla is kind of volunteering for it because it's a way to see him. Yeah. I mean, I could, I don't know. What do you want me to say?
Good evening. Good evening.
I could say, Lísa ní Canadian is on them dumb. August is on or more of a on seo le gachtain. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because I don't think many Finnish people know much about Irish as a language.
Have you all seen the Kneecap film? That's how you see about Irish. Did the Kneecap film make its way here?
I don't know it.
Yeah, there's a rap band from West Belfast called Kneecap, who made a film that has won lots of awards and everything, and they speak Irish and take a lot of drugs in the film, and it's very entertaining.
Thank you for the tip. I think we'll look into it. Was this like, because I was thinking this is the first novel which you started, was this the kind of story, did you know that you would write this story, or like was it a long time like brewing, or
like it came to me really quickly, and I don't know if that's because I threw a lot of stuff in there that was about things that in my early life or something. Like the Cushla and Michael are completely invented, but I think there was another thing that so I have a short story, and also I wrote a play. The play is really bad and no one will ever see it, so you're all safe from that. But both of them began with a man walking into a bar. So there's like a woman behind a bar, and I think I maybe watched too many westerns when I was a child. It's like the saloon doors swing open and this man walks in. So the book kind of begins like that as well. So that was a thing, obviously with me, and I didn't realise it. But yeah,
that's not funny. Well, we talked a little bit about conflict and love story was the thing you wanted to write. I wonder, did you have any, did you relate to some great love story when you were younger, or was there some kind of...
Do you mean in literature or something? I'm trying to think of stuff that I read. God, I was talking about this before and people were horrified. So you know that book, is it Thérèse Racan, the French book? And somebody said, that's not a love story. It's like about really horrible lust. So I don't want to say it was that, but maybe there's something about people losing their heads for a little while when they fall for somebody. But I don't know about a great love story.
Yeah. maybe this is it.
Like I think like when I was a teenager, I read Jane Eyre, and I thought it was fine until the last part, and it said, "Reader, I married him," and I thought, "Oh, come on." He's like got a woman locked upstairs, and you've just got like Stockholm syndrome or something. Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, when you think about it, it's like all the great love stories. They are maybe not that great. Yeah. No. The other thing is when we. I think something that maybe resonates here in Finland is that it's a longer time since we had our war, but we also had like a war, and also it happened here in Finland. Like it was the second before the Second World War, and then we had the interior war. Mm-hmm. What's the word?
Civil War.
Civil War, yes. Before that, and I think they stuck with people, and we still write about it. And why do you think that is? Because I guess that in Ireland also you write still about the. Is there a lot of books about the troubles? Maybe not.
Well, I think there are, but I think something happened that in the 1970s there were some, and maybe 1970s up until about the early 1980s, there were books written about the troubles, novels, and then it seemed to dry up for a long time. But I don't think it's that people weren't writing about it. I think that publishers didn't want to publish them. And I think that part of it was because it was grinding on and on and on for so long that maybe they just thought that people were tired of it, and they didn't. And maybe, if it's going on and on, what else is there to say or something? And maybe there's something about the fact that there's been relative peace for a while. That it makes writers feel freer about going back to think about that and write about it. And also, I think that Anna Burns' book, Milkman, I don't know if any of you know that book. It won the Booker Prize maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. And she's a writer from Belfast, and it's about the Troubles. And I'm under no illusions that publishers might have been interested or more interested in my book because Milkman sold 100,000 copies in the UK. I think that might have had a lot to do with it as well, So I just think that just because it's not being published doesn't mean it's not being written.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah. Yes, and in Finland, I think we have been publishing those books.
Yeah,
but obviously there is a difference in the time and how. If it's relatively peaceful at the moment. Is there still something you would like to say about,
Yeah, I don't know. The only thing that I didn't say, and I think I should say, I think from the outside, conflicts are never as straightforward as, Catholics against Protestants. And it wasn't about people who wanted the British to leave, against people who didn't want the British to leave. I don't think you can look at anything without looking at class, social class. So I think that made people's experiences of the Troubles much worse. People who lived in areas of low employment and, high deprivation, that was much worse. And actually, since the violence stopped, those areas are still a disaster. And instead of murder, they've got really high suicide rates and all kinds of other problems. So that's all. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for the book.
Thank you for having me. Thanks very much.